So Beatrix, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So this is going to be a particularly interesting conversation for so many reasons, but I think it's one of the ones that I'm looking forward to because, I mean, here in the UK, I'm right in saying there's about 20 million people that are affected by sleep, which is a staggering amount of people that are affected by sleep or have regular sleep challenges. But I don't. So the clients that I've worked with more, but there is a bit of irony to it. So I don't, and a lot of my clients do. So I've researched and I've studied elements. I'm certainly no expert in it whatsoever, but normally if there's a few quick wins that we can introduce that make a bit of a difference, then we do. But ironically, the day of doing this recording, I woke up, boom, bolt upright at 3 o'clock in the morning and could not go back to sleep. So maybe it will be particularly interesting. So for people that aren't aware of who you are, Beatrix, and have maybe seen a bit of your work, you are, as we've just heard, a real expert in this area. But how did you decide to get into focusing on sleep as your area of expertise?
So I basically started with sleep problems. My journey of becoming someone who's knowledgeable about sleep is because I struggled. So just over 10 years ago now, I really struggled with all elements of sleep. So being able to switch off in the evening and drift off to sleep was a problem. Then I used to wake up in the middle of the night and not being able to get back to sleep. And then, of course, when we wake up in the morning, that consistent tiredness in the morning and not wanting to even get out of bed was also becoming a challenge. So this obviously developed over a period of time. And it got to a point where I would actually wake up with consistent nosebleeds in the middle of the night because that's how exhausted my body was. And one day it just scared me so much because the nosebleed wouldn't stop. And it really scared me. And you know, I was in my mid-20s and I'm like, what's wrong with me, right? And you know, your example is a really good one. If you don't struggle with sleep, you don't really think about it. You go to bed and it's great, right? But when somebody does develop sleep problems, almost your entire life becomes about how to get through the day and hoping and wishing that you will sleep well at night. So that's how I ended up then researching sleep. First of all, went to my GP and obviously gone through the medical route because I didn't know where to begin. But there was nothing really that seemed to have been wrong with me. Medically, there was nothing wrong. And a lot of the people that I work with have gone through the same route. Medically, there's nothing wrong. They might have even had sleep consultations, the whole sleep test. And then obviously I looked at all sorts of different things and I'm sure we'll go into more details, but there's a lot of different things that affect our sleep. Science is a really big part of that, but we can do a lot of practical things during our day to enhance our ability to be able to sleep really well at night.
And that's one of the things that I really like about your methodology. I introduced you about a year ago or last year to one of my private clients, and the work that you did with him wasn't just about a few hacks here and there. It was very much looking at things holistically, very much like how I operate with my private clients across all areas of their life, personally, professionally, financially, and you look at all of those areas, which I think is fascinating. But before we go into some of those areas that you address, let's start with something, because sleep is something that doesn't really come up in conversation that much, you know, so people aren't really comparing their sleep. So what do you regard as a quality night's sleep for someone?
So that's a really great question to begin with, actually, because when you do have conversations about it, what actually I find is everyone's description is slightly different. And this is what I've seen with clients over the last 6 years is you might fit into the scientific 7 to 9, but the dynamics of what it means to you are different. So is it that maybe it's going to be falling asleep quicker than what you think you should, or what you think is happening right now? Or maybe some of the ideas that I get from my clients is that, you know, they're really worried about the waking ups at night. But do we need to make them into a problem? Or is it something that is maybe just part of how you are as a human being, bringing in personality traits, maybe even bringing in some of your current medical challenges you have, you know? And I think what I regard as a great quality sleep is being able to drift off to sleep easily.
Mm-hmm.
And generally that's, for me, that's within the 10-15 minutes, being able to sleep through the night. But you see, for me, I don't worry about the wake ups, providing I literally turn over, go back to sleep. That can happen as we change from one sleep stage to another, for example. And then the third one, and the biggest one for me, is waking up and energized and naturally. So maybe waking up 5 minutes before my alarm. That means that I've concluded my sleep and my body was like, right, I had enough.
Mm.
So I think for me personally, that's how I describe it. I think for me personally, I don't get attached so much to the hours.
Yeah.
Because I will get what I need. So my sleep is pretty structured now. And I get about 7.5 hours of sleep pretty much consistently. But funnily enough, in the winter, I generally need a little bit more. So again, this is something that people don't think about. You know, less light exposure can cause the body to maybe adjust that sleep need.
Yeah, do you know, it's funny you say that, because I've learned myself, and through similar patterns, I fall asleep very, very quickly, like ridiculously quick. I will sometimes get into bed and I have my phone charger by my bed. I know that some people say don't say it, whatever, but it doesn't bother me. And sometimes before I've even been able to plug my phone in, I've fallen asleep. That's how quick I fall asleep. And I've used things like Sleep Cycle, and you literally just see me go from getting into bed to vroom, right down really quickly in the space of like 2 minutes. So yeah, you're right. So there's the two elements. There's the people that maybe struggle to get to sleep, and then there's the broken sleep. So let's start with in fact, before we say that, can you say about the different times? What I've noticed as well is when I eat, actually, what I eat makes a difference. So similarly to you, 7.5 hours for me is about perfect if I've been exercising and eating well. If I've been eating a bit of crap, so a bit of extra chocolate, maybe that extra, I was gonna say the extra square, it's not that extra, that extra bar that I shouldn't have had, or I've had, I don't know, some fast food or whatever in the day, I noticed that I need sort of half an hour to an hour more. And I've always assumed that's because it's my body needing more sleep because it didn't get as much nutrients. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, that's interesting. And obviously you said about winter as well. I think we can all vouch for that. So let's start with getting to sleep.
Okay.
What are some things that people who are struggling to sleep can introduce to help them to get to sleep? And what are some of the things that obviously prevent falling asleep relatively quickly?
I'm actually going to start with something that I see with people that struggle with sleep problems. If you struggle with sleep problems listening to this, you're going to relate to that. Often people who struggle with sleep start thinking about, am I even going to be able to fall asleep hours before? So what I call the switching off, and it is a process, it is not a switch. Even for you notice you fall asleep quickly, but you would have had a certain process, a physical, mental, and emotional preparation to allow you to be able to do that. It's never really an actual switch. So when we look at the switching off part, is that preparation. And often what I see with people who struggle with sleep problems is the preparation is full of fears and worries and anxieties about whether or not they can even get to sleep and be able to sleep enough. So if you imagine that, you're heading into bed already fearing. And on the opposite side, a good switching off process, a good preparation for sleep is literally this physical, emotional, and mental preparation that allows the body, the mind, to be able to rest and fall into sleep. So it's this sort of peacefulness, restfulness, calm part of it, but not just physically. I think a lot of people have this misconception that, if I have a warm bath or I spray some lavender oil on my pillow, then everything will be fine. But what about your emotions? What about maybe those those mental things that come on, the thoughts, you know, maybe the mistakes, maybe the arguments you remember just before going to bed. So what I suggest people do is really look at what they do that sort of 45 minutes before going to bed, because we're going to learn a lot about that sleep process, that switching off process from that time. And every time when I work with clients, even if they don't think they're doing something, there's going to be elements of something that is going to affect the sleep negatively.
So what are some of those? What are some of the things that for you, out of all of the clients that you've worked with and all the research that you've done, that are some definite no's that you shouldn't do if you're struggling to get to sleep?
So the definite no's is one of the things that I'll be a little bit loose with, because I think every single person, every single client that I work with was slightly different. So the first step is figuring out what are those personality traits that are hindering your ability to be able to either sleep, get into sleep, or sleep through the night. So I'll give you some examples. So first of all, I'm a very analytical, used to be much more of a perfectionist type of person. So guess what happens when I was going to bed? Adding a bit of introversion to it, because also a little bit more introverted, I was literally looking back at my day and I was looking at what went wrong, what didn't go wrong. But for me as a personality type, it was actually detrimental. I started worrying about things. I started self-punishing myself. You know, I would have gone into overthinking. So that's one of the things that I would suggest you do as a listener, is look at that 45 minutes, figure out what are the negative things that are happening, and that's where you start. So for me, overthinking was one. Another example is often people over-prepare, not for sleep, but they over-prepare for going to bed. So as an example, you know, as you're walking towards your bed, are you thinking, oh, great, I'm ready for sleep? Or are you saying, okay, well, I get into bed and let's see what happens. And I might take my phone or a book with me just in case I can't get to sleep. Those are behavior patterns that you're creating. Instead of fully committing to sleep, you're doing all these other things that might actually be postponing the sleep.
It's funny because one of the things that you mentioned to this particular client that I won't name for obviously for confidentiality, but he told me about was, he said, well, Beatrix is saying to me that I need to go up to bed and just get into bed when I'm ready to sleep. No going up, laying in bed, watching TV, reading books. And I sort of had a little smile to myself, because I mentioned that I don't struggle to sleep, but I do exactly that. I hate laying in bed, watching TV, or reading a book before bedtime. I will stay downstairs and then I'll literally come up, go to the bathroom, and then strip off, and then I'm in bed, and then that's it. So I was wondering how much that's a contributing factor, whereas there's almost these I see these images in my mind, and it was definitely my parents always read before they went to sleep, and there's almost like this like that's how it should be done, maybe, of people think that. So that's interesting. So that 45 minutes before, what are you doing, and some behavior patterns there. What about the things to do?
So just to add to what you just sort of concluded, I think the bottom line of this is think of bed as a place for sleep and intimacy only. If you're in a relationship, obviously intimacy is going to be part of the bed itself, but it's not for anything else. And I think that's kind of what the point is. Now, another thing here is...
You're saying I can't go and jump on my bed anymore? No more bouncing on my bed, pretending I'm a 5-year-old?
Well, listen, if it's not a problem, it's never going to be a problem. So I think, you know, you don't struggle. So you can probably almost do most things because you don't approach bed that way. I think, you know, that's the funny bit is I always say to my clients, I don't mind whether or not you do or don't do something, but if it's a problem, that's a problem. You got to change that.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So, you know, and I think the reading is a really great one because historically that used to be part of lifestyle. You know, an evening would have included some reading. But today what I've seen is it's become this next thing to do rather than actually really engaging with the idea of sleeping. So extending the day. You know, it might be a hobby element to it, that you don't have time reading during the day because you're so busy, and you're like extending your day by doing something nice for yourself. So so the things to do is breaking it down to the 3 elements. And the reason I'm not going to give one-off tips, because if you're struggling with sleeping, well, you would have read probably tens of hundreds of articles of the same old bog standard tips. What I do is help clients to figure out what it is. Look at where you're at, look at, is it hindering or helping? And then apply new techniques. So first is the physical preparation. So how does your body feel? Maybe is your breathing fast? Is your heart rate fast? Are you maybe, physically feeling that anxiousness? Anything like that? Maybe you're overheated from a warm bath before, any of those physical elements. And what you can do is you literally sit on the bed before lying down and you just check in with yourself. Mm-hmm. The second one is the emotional element. How do you feel going to bed and going or falling asleep? Do you feel negatively or positively about it? Even positive emotion, excitements, can stop us to sleep well, right? It's the typical story of the children potentially going to maybe a day out the next day. They can't go to sleep because they're so excited.
Yeah, like when you're going on holiday. I still get that now when I'm going on holiday.
Yeah. And the third one is the mental preparation. So what's going on up in your head? Because again, when you lie down, you turn the lights off. If you haven't concluded some of those thoughts, they'll come racing back. And I see this all the time, because you haven't created time for the thoughts to actually be dealt with.
Yeah. And I think I can definitely vouch for that. When I do have a thought in bed, I have to grab my phone, and I know people would say don't use your phone, use sort of a pencil and a notepad, so then you don't get the blue light, but I'll have to capture it. So I'll go, right, I'll capture that, I'll deal with that in the morning, rather than go to bed thinking about it, wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, what was that thing I was thinking about last night? So I get that. Let's talk about, and I know some of this might seem obvious, but let's talk about the benefits of sleep. Right. So we've got the obvious ones, which I still would love you to touch on the obvious ones, because they may not be obvious to everybody. And also some of the slightly more unique benefits of getting better quality, deeper sleep.
So what I look at when I work with clients, I'll introduce them to the 7 areas of life, which is the core of the methodology that I work with. And I think that's a good way to go through these ones, actually. So maybe I'll just give one example of each area, and then it's going to be a great intro. So the first one is physical. That's energy levels. Do you feel energized enough after sleep to be able to either get through all the things you need to do, or be physically fit enough? This is where exercise comes in. Do you feel energized enough to really live a fulfilled life during the day? Energy levels are always linked to lack of sleep. When you don't sleep well, you don't feel energized. That's one of the biggest ones. The second one is emotions. So what I look at here is emotional stability. Do you get snappy? Impatience, snappiness also is another negative sign of potential sleep deprivation. And you will feel that in yourself. If on a good day, you're really cool, calm, grounded, relaxed, but on another day when you don't sleep well, you're not, then there is a sign, right? So look at the emotional stability in terms of how quickly or how negatively maybe you respond to certain things, certain stresses in the day. That links to sleep. The third one is social. So how much energy, and again, it's obviously they all combine eventually, how much energy you have to give to others. But also, do you actually reach out for support? When we're tired, we generally tend to dramatize things even more. Not always for non-existent reason, but when we're tired, we think everything is really bad and we can't seem to find a solution. But this is where either reaching out for support, but having the energy to be able to do that plays a role. The next one we look at is your, what I call spiritual. Now, what's spiritual? Everybody has a different description of what that means for them. So whether or not you're religious or not, you'll have this. This is your element of sort of harmony and peace in your life. Harmony is how you work with your outside. Peace is fully internal. This is the moment when you lie in bed, how peaceful do you feel? When you wake up in the morning, do you wake up feeling already sort of behind, already maybe missing out on things? This is where FOMO and so on comes in. That's that peacefulness element. Then we look at intellectual. This is where a lot of clients, because of their sleep deprivation, they no longer have hobbies because they're just too exhausted to embrace even something that requires some intellectual input, or even finding a hobby. You know, this is again also relates to people who may be studying something, or students. You know, when you're sleep deprived, your brain isn't going to take in as much information. This is brain fog. This is all those negative things that are outcomes of sleep deprivation. Then we move into environment. Often people think environment is only your bedroom, but it isn't. Look at your bed first, your bedroom, and then your home environment. Home environment, having arguments, you know, either sort of those relationships, but in terms of an environmental factor can play a big role. And when we again don't sleep well, we might not tidy up. Clutter can build up. We might not be dealing with all the things we need to be dealing with, paying bills, you know, anything like that. That can become an environmental part. And one of the things I point out in this one is look at your bedroom. I have worked with clients who have had pictures in their bedrooms that reminded them of negative experience in life. Guess how you're going to feel when you walk into your bedroom if something is reminding you of negative experience. And then we look at the occupational, and that's purely work. Now, if you're currently not working, or if you're a student, look at what you spend the most of your time that's some sort of a work type, either literally studying. That's considered work in my books as well.
Yeah.
And when we are again not able to sleep well, we either not as interested, so lack of motivation, you know, especially in the morning, or even 3 o'clock in the afternoon when that energy dip comes. Or also, one of the other things I found here is lack of confidence. If somebody has not slept through well for numbers of days, months, years, they generally don't think they can achieve as much as they actually could achieve. So you look at confidence. And as you can see, all 7 areas kind of overlap a little bit, but every single area is going to be affected by sleep and sleep deprivation.
So these are all areas that can be improved, is what we're talking about, really. And it's interesting. So I've experienced this personally, and I've grown up playing ice hockey, right? So on the ice rink, I'm right saying you're from Hungary originally.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So you'll know about ice hockey and Zambonis, right? Zambonis that go around the ice and clean the ice. And there's in terms of your memory as well, sleep's really important for memory as well, because when we're sleeping, then we're able to, and you'll explain this better than I will, but it's to do with how we essentially move from our short-term memory into our long-term memory, and sleep plays a part in that role, I believe I'm right in saying.
Absolutely. Yes. And you know, the biggest 3 that I see is energy levels in terms of physical energy, emotions, so how well able to be emotionally balanced, and this intellectual mental part, so being able to retain memories, being able to remember things, even if you're, you know, this is the perfect example. Where did I put my keys? You know, how many times does that happen? So there is a lot of, there are those 3 main elements. And the reason I don't go too much into the science, because there's great scientific books on the exact research projects. I normally look at those things that actually my clients struggle with, and they're more than just the memory retention. They're more than just those scientific things that have been pointed out in books.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into some of those things in a minute. I think the thing that the analogy that I was sort of alluding to was, if you're ever, and anyone that's ever been ice skating will know this, right? If you've been out and you've been ice skating, it gets to a point where you see all the ice churned up, and it's like there's like a layer of snow on the ice. And when you're playing ice hockey like I am or was, it slows you down. The puck moves slower. It's not as fast. It's not as enjoyable. It's just hard work, is the honest truth of it. So then the Zamboni comes around, cleans the ice. And that for me is a little bit like what sleep's doing. I know I can get to the end of the day and I'm like, I'm spent. You know, my mental bandwidth is spent, but a good night's sleep enables me to overcome that. So on that, and touching on the science side of things, I'd love to talk about REM sleep. For people that aren't familiar with it, what is it and why is it important?
So I give you a practical answer, because actually a lot of the times what I see is people either would have read the research and the science, or it's not really relevant. So REM sleep is one stage of sleep that we experience overnight. People often refer to it as deep sleep. And what I found now is culturally, people think that REM sleep is the only type of sleep stage that they should be experiencing and that guarantees good quality sleep. But the reality is that you need a range of sleep stages across your night to be able to really achieve that quality. And the other thing that I've also seen, and you would have had this experience, you know, I'm sure talking with clients about sort of potential sleep things, is that there's a lot of articles we read about this, you know, the 90-minute cycles. But the reality is, at the moment, currently, as I know, nobody can train you to have exact amounts of REM sleep. Your body does this naturally. So by improving the practicalities around it, you're improving the quality, not necessarily just REM sleep. And I read a really interesting research article where they've looked at these different sleep stages. And what they realized is it didn't matter as much exactly how much REM sleep a person had if they had a good balance overnight. And I think this is one of the things that I always talk about with clients. REM sleep is important, but that's not the only important thing you need to think about when you think of sleep. So for example, if somebody comes to me with a sleep problem and they're already stressing about REM sleep, it's not going to be contributing positively to their ability to be able to rest, relax, and recharge, because they were worried about it. So, but it is a big part of sleep, but it's only one part. And I think that's one of the things that I basically talk about. Generally speaking, a lot of people that I come across with way overanalyze the exact importance of REM sleep. It is important, but you're not able to be in charge of exactly what your body does. It will enjoy REM sleep, but you don't necessarily know how that happens. It's going to be something your body does do by itself.
So you mentioned it's one stages. So the other stages of sleep in let's say a typical 7.5, 8 hour sleep. What are they? What points are we going in and out of them?
So every single person will have a completely different combination. And this is where sleep studies come in. When you look at an entire night's sleep study of a person and compare it to other people, they all have different stages happening in different sequences and different lengths as well. So there is no one solution here. That's really the main point. And I think if you're, as a listener, is really interested in what that balance is and how maybe that's contributing to the quality of your sleep, go have a sleep study done. The wearable devices are good, but they don't give you a fully 100% accurate reading, because it's only on your wrist. When you go and have a sleep study, there is sensors all over your head, your chest, sometimes even other areas of your body as well. So depending on what they're looking for. So I don't really want to give people an exact number, because it doesn't really exist. There is no such thing as ultimate perfection. as the sleep stage flow is concerned.
Okay. You mentioned some wearables, so you've got various different things like the Aura Ring and things. I've really not gone into it in depth for a reason that I've already mentioned, that I actually sleep pretty well, but I was interested. Do you think even apps like Sleep Cycle are useful to just get a bit of a gauge, or do you just think that they're not really worth using?
I think, I don't go against new technologies. I think it's a great sort of path for us to explore. The problem I had with a lot of these things is I come across clients who use them, but they don't understand the practicalities. They see this graph of this random information and they don't really understand what that means practically. So often they tend to actually get overly anxious about what they see.
Yeah.
And one example is I've had a client, and I actually have quite a few clients who come with sort of data. And again, I think the technology out there is great, but just approach it from a relaxed point of view, not a descriptive diagnosis point of view. And that's it. If you approach it with fun, it's going to give you some guidance. Brilliant. That's what they're there for. So one example I had with a client was, I'm not going to name the technology because it almost doesn't matter. But what happens is in the morning, the person actually saw that the app rated the quality of their sleep quite low, and they felt good. So now they woke up refreshed, mostly. They felt good about their sleep, but then the app or the tracker device told them that it's not good, and they started to doubt the fact that they were sleeping well. And it created this whole big thing about, oh my God, so am I not feeling refreshed then? Or what, is it even true, or what's wrong? And I think that's kind of the point that I wanted to sort of mention is, first of all, trust how you feel. And the app will never be able to tell you that. It can give you the data, which is amazing, but it's not going to make you, it's not going to tell you how you feel.
Yeah, I suppose that's the ultimate way of determining your sleep. How do you feel? Do you feel energized? Do you feel focused? Do you feel all of those things? So I want to go through, before we go on to dealing with broken sleep, I want to do a bit of myth busting with you, Beatrix, on a few things. We'll try and keep this almost like a quick fire round of of things. So blue light. Does it affect sleep beforehand? Is it something we should be blocking out?
It does affect sleep, but you've got to look at your light exposure during the entire day, not just blue light itself.
Okay. And most of us, we're under lights and we're using computers. So if we want to change that during the day, how do we go about even doing that?
So the first step is it really a problem? If it isn't a problem, don't make it into one. Secondly, natural light. Go outside, even though currently the situation is different in every country, but go outside. It's going to help balance out how your body responds to different light sources.
On that note, I've got to mention it because I've got them in this office here. I read a bit of research on people that worked in offices were particularly prone to having poor sleep because of the fact they've got those fluorescent light bulbs that they're under all day. They might be more efficient because they what's the LED lights now that all these companies are changing to, but they're so bright and it's such a bright white light. I mean, we've all experienced it when you change a light bulb for an LED one. It's like this bright white, and there's no warmth to the light. So that's something that.
And also to add to that is look at your home. What kind of lights do you have? If your lights are super bright right up until the moment you go to sleep, guess what's going to happen? Your body is thinking it's midday because the light exposure is high. So that's quite practical to look at, is how does my body respond to light exposure, both inside the house and outside?
Cool. People that call themselves early birds or night owls, is that biologically programmed, or is that just something they think, and can it be changed?
Okay, great question. Now, my first question is, How do you know? Now, a lot of people that I come across over the years, they think they won, but their behavior is driving that. So to give you an example, actually, I'll start on a different note. Yes, when you have a proper sleep study done, they can establish whether or not your body clock is aligned to what, and that's going to be personal. And it doesn't mean 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, or 10 p.m., 11 p.m. It's whatever your body does. So it's not, we can't prescribe it for ourselves. It's naturally how our body clock works. But if you think of traveling internationally, your body clock can reset if you go into a different time zone. And that's often influenced by the practicalities, eating times, light exposure, can even be air quality. Lots of different things can actually shift that. And often people don't even know that you don't only have one clock, circadian rhythm. Every organ has a circadian rhythm, and then it's an orchestra of circadian rhythms that are helping you to be able to get through your entire 24 hours. And it's not a 24-hour clock either. It's a little bit off. It's a little bit different than 24. So, and there are people who are genuinely early and genuinely late. But often what I found is you want to choose what you are. And sometimes people go against what they naturally are. So the great way to find out is don't set alarms. Have a look at the lifestyle you have and see how your body responds to it. If you eat late, most likely you want to stay awake later because your body is focusing on digestion rather than, an hour after dinner, a heavy dinner, you're probably not really going to be able to fall asleep that easily because the body is focusing on digesting, not focusing on let's go to sleep now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I never knew that every organ has a circadian rhythm. For people that maybe aren't familiar with circadian rhythms, can you just explain what that is?
How long do we have?
This is supposed to be the quick fire round. We're not doing too good a job at the moment, but
okay. I'd rather you look it up because I don't want to shortcut the explanation. Look it up. There's plenty of great scientific detailed articles about the circadian rhythm.
Okay. Things like power naps. So I've heard things about have power naps, but never have them for longer than 20 minutes. You should have 40-minute power naps. I mean, there's all different types of research. So let's assume a power nap is a nap within the day for any length period of time. Worthwhile, yes or no, based on your experience?
I'm going to have fun with this one. You as a good sleeper, do you ever need a nap?
Rarely.
That's the answer. So if your body is actually getting enough quality and quantity of hours of sleep consistently, you should be able to last the entire day without the need of a nap. And often what happens with people who struggle with sleep problems is they patch their sleep with naps. And that's what actually impacts the circadian rhythm and the body clock because your sleep need after a nap decreases. And it's almost like your body thinks, oh, it's a new morning. So I'm always, when I work with clients, the ultimate goal is you don't need a nap because your body is fully functioning at its optimum because the sleep at night is giving you what you need.
Cool. So I'm just making sure I've covered all of the key ones. Having a bath before you sleep. So I've heard about that to change inner body temperatures. Is that a myth, or is that a sort of a wise tale, or is that something that you'd recommend?
I don't particularly recommend it because often what happens is actually it raises the body temperature way too high. And then what your body is dealing with is trying to bring that down rather than, again, focusing on sleep. So, but it does have positive impacts to the emotions and to the mental ability to be able to switch off because it's relaxing. So if you like a bath, number one. If you don't like a bath, don't have a bath. You know, that's a personal preference. If you do think that maybe a warm shower or bath is helping you to relax, then maybe don't make it super hot. Because if your body temperature raises too much, it can actually make you sweat, and therefore your body is now too literally physically bothered to focus on falling asleep because it thinks it's in danger. So look at that really, is how do you feel after the bath? It can work, but I don't really fully sort of recommend it.
So let's talk about broken sleep. So people, for the people that sort of go to bed, wake up every hour on the hour, how do people start to go about changing that situation?
So I think the first step is establishing the extent of the problem. And the reason I'm going to start here is because often people worry too much about the fact that they wake up at night. So look at out of 7 days, and obviously don't just look at 7 days, but maybe look at 6 weeks, over 6 weeks, but break it down into 7 days. How many times it happens? Is it just maybe once a night you wake up once? Or is it that every single night this is happening? So look at the pattern first. The pattern is important because if it only happens every so often, please do not worry about it.
So for me, in my example that I mentioned this morning, waking up bolt upright at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to go and change my whole lifestyle just because I've woken up once at 3 a.m. But let's assume there are people that are waking up three, 4 times a night, 6 nights out of 7.
So now what we look at is a pattern. How I explain this is, and I don't mean to be rude in any shape or form, but what it means practically is over time, your body got trained that the sleep pattern that you have is that it's always disturbed. Now, there's a couple of reasons that can happen. You could have an underlying medical problem. Please go have it checked, have yourself checked, because this is where sleep disorders can come in. Some people don't even know that they're actually struggling with a sleep disorder that is waking them up consistently. And again, go have an assessment for it. If it happens at a really serious pattern note or way, you must have an assessment first. And I really stress that because a lot of people try and fix it, but what they need is actually figure out what the problem is first. Now, if it is a lifestyle, habit-based, non-medical, or it seems that it's a non-medical problem, then what I would really look at is your behavioral patterns. How the things that you do when you wake up initially, this is literally the first couple of seconds, 5 to 10 seconds of you waking up, whatever time that is. What's going on in that sequence? Is it that maybe you'll get worried about it, you'll get frustrated about it? You know, if you wake up at night and you straight away get frustrated about it, guess what happens? Your body kicks in the adrenaline, kicks in the hormones, and it wakes you up even more. So look at that initial response. What I look at here is what are the stressors you have and what is your response? And when you're able to establish that, and again, keeping a sleep diary is a great way to do that. Piece of paper, you know, keep a pattern diary. The reason I don't really want to go into sort of an analysis of sleep, because in these cases, it's a pattern. What are the patterns that are continuing that waking up, that are non-medical?
So what would be again, to put some context to this, so what would be a contextual example that someone would have that's a pattern, that's a stressor and a response?
So I'll give you one of the top ones that I tend to see. During the day, you're probably someone who are highly productive, even if maybe you don't even sleep well. You go in and out of meetings, you're very productive, or you do your best to be productive. So what your body is trained and your mind is trained on is what's next. I've done this task, what's next? I've done this task, what's next? Maybe distractions come in. Oh my gosh, my phone ping. Oh, I'll look at that next. So think of this what's next mentality. when you train your body to do that during the day, that continues at night. The only thing your body knows is what's next. And when we have that kind of pattern, this is one of the things that I see quite often, is your body wakes up or transition or does its best to transition to a new sleep stage, but you become a little bit awake and your brain goes, what's next? And it gets you out of sleep. And again, this is just one example. Another one is emotions, getting frustrated about the fact that you're awake. This is one of the top two that I see all the time. What you need to do is look at your day, allocating some time during the day to actually mentally prepare first for sleep. If you close your day, if you teach your body and train your body to be able to relax during the day, it will be able to relax through the night as well, both emotionally and physically.
So what you're saying is that what you do in the day is what's impacting you at night in both those instances in your stressors. Okay. So by changing the way that you operate. So if you have someone, so a lot of the people that listen to this are highly ambitious. They are entrepreneurs. They are business owners. They are the doers of this world.
Yes.
And their argument, and certainly my argument, would be, well, I need to be highly productive in the day because otherwise I can't run and juggle all the balls that I juggle. So how do I go about trying to take the edge off of being productive in my day, which works for me in my day and helps me be successful, arguably, to then enabling, and again, this isn't my personal example, I'm just using this as someone that might be thinking, so how do I even go about doing that?
There is a difference between, and I'm just going to use the usual things we see outside of the world right now. There's a difference between you burning yourself out for the sake of burning yourself out and not actually honoring what your body needs for the sake of success, and potentially 10, 15, 20 years later, developing a serious health problem because of that, or learning what your body needs to give you consistent high performance. And this is where I look at, I'd rather you work at 80 or 90% every single day than 21 day, 100, maybe 2 days out of 10.
Yeah.
Because sleep problems will cause that.
I definitely agree with that. It's giving yourself some flex, isn't it? So that you're not burning, sort of not redlining the whole time. Which is I get it. Okay.
And I think you'll agree, you see this with your clients as well. When you're actually able to develop that, it doesn't mean go sit cross-legged for an hour. That does not mean, relaxation doesn't just mean that. It can mean lots of different things. But when, even your clients develop this healthy relationship with their body and their business, they can maintain that all the time. They love what they do and they can maintain a healthy, great, happy, fulfilled lifestyle. And that's not a delusion, that's achievable.
Not at all. Absolutely. I was having this conversation with a client of mine the other day, and we were talking, so we both haven't drunk for nearly 3 years, drunk alcohol. I had a couple of drinks in between, but for the majority of 3 years, I've not drunk. And we were saying how by having done that, we both know ourselves so much better. So we know, like for me now, I'll know, like if I'm getting tired and I'm feeling it, then I'll shut the laptop down early. I'll go home and I'll chill out one evening. Because for me, just that whole push, I've got to push through, I've got to hustle and grind it out, I know is detrimental. And we were saying that having that awareness from having not drunk alcohol is that, it enables us to be able to do that and have that awareness when we've pushed it too hard because we've exercised too much, or sometimes the stresses of work get particularly heavy, and then that we don't account for that. So that's
absolutely. And I think, self-awareness, like you said, being able to be self-aware stops us regretting things later.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. We can't possibly have a conversation about sleep without talking about dreams.
Oh.
So I am actually someone that, I know everyone say, or the people say you dream every night, it's just whether you remember them, but I would say 30 out of 31 evenings, I that I sleep and I wake up, I do not remember a dream at all. It's no issue. I might remember one small vivid dream once a month, maybe. My girlfriend, on the other hand, has really vivid dreams every night, multiple dreams a night. How so for people that wake up in the morning and feel like that they've not slept because they've been dreaming all night, is that something that can be addressed and can be worked on so they feel more energized in the day by not feeling like they've been up all night in their dream?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with a sleep disorder group that most people don't even know about. So, and again, it's really important. If you are seriously always struggling and it feels like the dreams are the main cause of that, please seek help, because there is a sleep disorder group that is sort of night terrors. They're not bad dreams. There is a significant difference between a bad dream and a night terror. So,
What are the differences?
The difference is that night terrors are, through a sleep assessment, they can actually look at it and find them. So what happens in night terrors is a very basic description, is that the body's transition between the sleep stages, I explain it as get stuck. So it's not flowing into a new stage. The body is, what happens, and this is just one example of one of the within the group, is you might wake up, feel like you're in the dream, but you can't move your limbs. So this is sleep paralysis. So you think it's a bad dream, but actually it's a medical disorder of that transition stage. And I think another one is there's a few different ones. If you're interested in the topic, please go look at it and have an assessment, because bad dreams are not really that traumatizing. They're not nice, but they're not traumatizing to the level when you're like completely worried about sleeping at night. So let's move on to the bad sleep side, bad dream or any type of dream side. What I found over the years is it actually depends how people think about it. Do you miss your dreams? If you miss your dreams, that tends to come up in conversations about what's wrong with me so I don't remember my dreams. But actually, you may be a type of person that as you transition between the sleep stages, when you're dreaming, your body just doesn't remember it. It doesn't have to become a problem. When we have a really intense dream, it creates those physical responses. Maybe the heart rate increases. If you're listening to this and you would have woken up in the middle of the night because you felt like you kicked, the body can actually act out in certain sleep stages, which means that can be the trigger why you now wake up, because you just kicked. And that physical response is the one that gets you out of that particular sleep stage. But the biggest thing for me over the years that I've heard or I've seen with clients and I heard from clients is whether or not you miss them or you overthink them. So we all think about the fact that, that dream must mean something.
Yeah, the people that jump on Google and
Right?
review every single, what does this dream mean? Yeah.
Well, remember, your brain is consuming information all the time, and the brain is at night then filing that information. Of course, it's going to process all those visual experiences, visual audio experiences you've had during the day. That's often the combination of the dreams, is you see a person, you hear something, you might have revisited a holiday scene, maybe your brain creates a random scene. So it doesn't mean that we actually have to go into over analyzing what it means. It's just a dream. And yes, if you think it's got relevance, maybe you want to work on that area of your life. But I personally suggest don't overthink them,
Cool. So a few other areas that I really want to touch on before we round up today. Oversleeping. Mm-hmm. So people oversleeping. So we spoke about people that can't get to sleep. We spoke about people that have broken sleep throughout the night. But what about the people that wake up in the morning and then they're just like, really, the alarm's going off. I need more sleep. They hit snooze, or they hit the off button, and they pull the pillow over their head and they're back to sleep. Oversleeping, is that something that can be overcome in the same way that the other things that we've spoken about can?
So absolutely. I mean, and again, what I'm going to start with here is, if you have a medical problem that you might not be aware of, could be the one that's causing oversleeping. So we got to start there, because, you know, even if you get a cold and you have high fever, the tendency for the body is to want to sleep, because that's a recovery system, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, what is the root of the oversleeping? Medical issues could be one. And you might not even know yet that maybe that's a medical problem driving it. Another one that I see with people who actually struggle with sleep problems is a self-punishing pattern of, I should have woken up at 7, but I overslept till 9. But if you really don't have good quality sleep at night, of course your sleep need is still high, because you haven't had the quality and the quantity you need. So oversleeping can come from a medical outcome. It can come from the fact that your quality of the sleep is just not high enough to get enough in terms of quality and quantity. And then the third one is when people don't fit into the 7 and 9 hours of what a healthy adult needs. And this is the sort of recommended amount of hours a healthy adult needs. But remember, you might actually don't fit into that time frame, that 7 and 9. There are people, but don't blame your sleep problems on it. But there are people in the world who need less than 6 hours of sleep, and their body still functions at optimum. So they don't need a nap. They don't need anything. They don't need coffee to continue. They literally designed that way. And there are people who sometimes actually, because that's how their body is generally over the 9 hours. What I see most of the time is either it's a habitual problem or sleep problem, or it's a medical problem. Cool. Because that few percentage is very few. It's not most of us.
Yeah. So whilst we're on the subject of waking up, what about alarms and snoozing? Do you personally use an alarm every morning to wake up? You do. Okay, cool. So I can't imagine that you see it as a bad thing then to have. Nope. And are you pro using sort of these? I forget the name. There's a particular brand of light that comes on as Lumi lights.
That's one brand, sorry.
Yeah, a brand. Other brands are available. But are you pro any of those, or pro using? I think even the iPhone now has got an ability to sort of wake you up with like a rather than that really annoying type alarm that you used to get. They've got these alarms that sort of fade in, so it's a little bit more pleasurable, more a pleasurable alarm wake up. What's your views on that?
I use alarms because actually what it gives me is a reference point of where I'm at with my sleep. So for example, maybe I don't think that I picked up a cold, which I rarely do, but me not waking up naturally just a few minutes before my alarm gives me a sign of, ooh, something's changed here. So I use it as a reference point. So I have my alarm set for 7 o'clock, and that's weekends as well. But actually, to be honest with you, I generally speaking wake up a little bit earlier than that. So I don't need my alarm. It's there as a reference point.
So more often than not, you wake up. It's there as like a backstop almost, like worst case scenario that you're getting up, so you can crack on with your day. Okay, that's interesting.
And then the other thing I would like to add to alarms: snooze, don't, because then if you have this comes up all the time. If you have either 2 or 3 different alarms in the morning, the most I heard within one of my corporate talks is somebody having something like 20 alarms 3 minutes apart. That's you basically fragmenting your sleep instead of actually committing to either sleep or committing to waking up.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy to do, but if you have a snooze and you use, let's start with my example. My alarm is at 7 and I continuously might have woken up later than 7, snooze it a bunch of times, and maybe I end up waking up at 7:30. Then I no longer commit to 7, I commit to 7:30.
So that's your tip then. If someone is a prolific snoozer and they know that they always snooze 20 minutes, just set the alarm 20 minutes later and get up at that moment. Okay, that's
commit to it. I think that's the biggest part. Is often people snooze, they don't commit to actually waking up. They're like, oh, I kind of really don't want to get up. You know, we've all had that.
Yeah, we certainly have. No, I can agree with that. I've got to ask the question. Cheese and sleep. So for me, is that something? Because I know when I have had cheese in the past, I've had dreams, weird dreams. Is there any foods to avoid prior to sleep if you want to get better quality sleep? And is cheese one of them?
This is probably one of the best questions I ever had, honestly. And I'll give you my personal example to that. When I was struggling with sleep problems, I did not know that I was dairy intolerant. Of course, our body responds to food. It does. It's a source of energy for us. It's a source of nourishment. But if you're feeding your body with the wrong things, that creates the wrong response. So I used to love very cheesy Italian dishes, like a really good spaghetti bolognese with lots and lots and lots of cheese on it. Now, if I had that for dinner, that was part of the reason where I wasn't actually being able to switch off, because that created the processes in my body that actually told my body, oh my gosh, what have you just given to me? This is wrong. So that response was there. I developed psoriasis over time because I didn't know. At the time I used to drink coffee. I didn't know that I was intolerant to caffeine. So yes, they're important. What I see is different things: allergies, overeating, emotional eating, and then sleep. These sort of intolerances. And look into it. And again, this is where the sleep diary and the self-awareness comes in. If you see a pattern, your body will tell you. The body will tell you it's going to develop problems, and they can be tracked back to food-related things. The other thing I wanted to add here is often what I see with clients who don't sleep well is they don't actually nourish themselves enough during the day. They might skip lunch. Maybe they didn't have breakfast. Maybe their main meal is dinner. So it's look at the distribution during the day and the type of foods that you're eating and how you feel after. Your body tells you. When I used to eat dairy, I used to feel a huge energy drop, probably 20, 30 minutes after. But I didn't know what it was. I thought it was tiredness.
It's fascinating, and this is what, like I say, I love your approach, Beatrix, because you do look at everything in such a holistic way with your clients and uncover some of those things. Only last week I was speaking with a client of mine who wants to run a particularly fast marathon, and he don't get me wrong, he's run particularly fast marathons. He's done 3.5 hour marathons, but we said, like, what was he was struggling on his last couple of marathons because for him 3.5 hours was slow, and we looked at it, and one of them was his diet on marathon day. It's a fundamental, really, rather than looking at all of the quick wins and the marginal gains. It's look at the fundamentals that could be changed. And it's funny you just saying that about being dairy intolerant. So when I grew up, I was allergic to all dairy products from when I was very first born, and then I've sort of grown out of that. Or at least I think I've grown out of it. I haven't actually had a test for a while, but I'm still allergic to eggs, nuts, shellfish, and eggs, nuts, shellfish. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, because when I do have cheese late at night, similar to you, I have some weird dreams. That they are the nights normally that if I am going to dream, then it's normally if I had cheese the night before. So maybe it's something to look into. But anyway, that's by the by. I just want to quickly go to my phone. I'm going to grab my phone. I'm not being rude. It's just because I asked in our group, which, by the way, I'm going to plug it here at this point. Anyone that's listening to this, I've got a free Facebook group, which Beatrix is actually in, called the Make It Happen Community. We've got over 5,000 positive-driven, ambitious, like-minded people in that group. And I asked, I said, I've got Beatrix on the show, any sleep-related questions? And we've got 3 questions here. One from Nash, one from Jimmy, one from Kate. Nash is, I think we've already we've touched on it, but we actually didn't answer it directly. So I'm going to ask it. Should Nash stick to sleeping in 90-minute patterns, i.e. 6 hours, 7.5 hours, 9 hours, which, I mean, that's the typical REM cycle, isn't it? 75 to 90-minute cycles. So, yeah, should he be doing that?
Again, we did refer to it. You're not just getting REM sleep. So what I normally say to clients is you got to develop an all-rounded good quality sleep. It doesn't mean you're going to sleep REM sleep always through your night. So the answer is, I would rather you pick a time that works with your lifestyle, commit to that time of going to sleep, develop a really good switching off process, which means you fall asleep within a short amount of period of time, and then you wake up naturally. Those will be the 2 ends of great quality sleep. Falling asleep easily, obviously sleeping through the night really well, but also waking up naturally. And that might not add up to 6, 7.5, and the multiples of 90. Because again, the process of waking up and falling asleep is not a switch, it's a process. So people don't tend to count that into the 90 minutes. They think, oh, the moment I fall asleep, but you don't know what that moment is. So look at the 2 ends of your sleep, and that will give you the quality and the quantity of the greatness.
There we go, Nash. Great answer. Thank you, Beatrix. Jimmy has just said here, it takes him so long to get to sleep, which we've spoken about. But what he said is he has so much going on around in his head of a night time. Is there anything that he can do to clear that up?
I kind of mentioned that with the overthinking and this next mentality. I have a funny feeling that that's probably the case. If you're listening to this and you seem to have an overactive mind, and again, I don't want to be diagnosing here, but from a lifestyle perspective, what I see is that means you're not allowing time to think. It means that you might be in action mode all day long, but you're not actually allowing your brain to go crazy, brainstorm, and actually calm down at the end of that cycle. So, your brain will go into this crazy thinking, but it will not maintain that forever. It's like running. You can never just sprint forever and ever and ever 24/7, because you're going to have the ups and downs. Thoughts are the same. So I would suggest making time away from your bedtime. So don't do it 5 minutes your bedtime, because that's probably going to ruin the sleep. But during the day, maybe in the afternoon, close your thoughts, close that sort of brainstorming or crazy sort of fast thoughts.
Jimmy, look, again, thank you again, Beatrix. Jimmy, I'm not for Jimmy that's hopefully listening to this, which he will be on its release, and anybody else, I'm definitely not a sleep expert by any stretch of the imagination. That's why I've got Beatrix on the show, but I know a thing or two about helping people in the day. And with my clients that are overthinkers, what I normally suggest them is very simple, is get out of your head. And what I mean by that is not get out of your head on drugs, is get a pen, get a paper, write everything down that's on your mind. So that might be going and buying a notebook from the shop and journaling every day. Or if it is tasks that need to be done, create a must-do list, have all those tasks on there, and then that, right, I can have peace of mind, I'm going to deal with that tomorrow. Like I mentioned at the beginning, a little bit earlier on in the episode, if I do have something that pops into my mind just before bed, I'll capture it on my phone notes, so I know I can deal with it in the morning. And then I can go to bed not having that thought that's opened up in my mind. There's actually a study, and I read a blog on this. It's known as the Zeigarnik effect. So there was a Lithuanian researcher that went and studied waiters, and what they did is they were studying the waiters and what they had as tables. So waiters They talk about having an open table and a closed table. And open tables are people that are still waiting for food, and closed tables when they're not and their order's done. And what was fascinating about the research was that if they went up to a waiter and said, "With anyone that's got an open table, right, what's table 4 waiting on?" they could reel it off. But as soon as that table would close and said, "Right, what did table 4 have?" they couldn't remember it. And it's because what they've done is they've closed that loop in their mind. It's when a great example of this is cliffhangers in TV shows. The reason they create the cliffhangers, they open a loop. The famous one, EastEnders, when you hear the dum, 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 which is a show over here in the UK for anyone that's listening to this around the world. And they leave us on that cliffhanger. So, Jimmy, my advice from the day perspective would be to get out of your head, and sort of Beatrix's advice of sort of doing that earlier on in the evening or in the day will help you sleep better as well. So some suggestions there. Kate's question is quite interesting. So Kate Jeffrey, she said, why is it that some people, her and her dad, are the same, I'm sure many others are, wake up with the clearest logical ideas or solution to a problem or headline for the next amazing piece of copy? It's often so clear, it's like you must have read it somewhere. Is this something you can harness or make more deliberate?
This is a great one, actually, because often people think that these things only come from sleep, but you can actually train your brain to come up with information you need. And you would know this,
like
right?
Lottery numbers. That's why who's so wealthy, Beatrix.
No, okay, funny, yes, but on a more practical note, right? So we can all come up with solutions to a question. In my coaching, I use a lot of questions, because when you ask your brain a question, it will answer it, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes overnight, what happens is you actually relax about wanting to desperately find an answer, and your brain goes generally a little bit more open and pull in different information because you're not judging it anymore. So this is one of the things I found. But what I would suggest in terms of sleep perspective, because this can become a negative sleep habit, that you're going to sleep and you're training your brain to think. And I've seen this before. If you continuously affiliate sleep with brainstorming, you're instructing your brain to do it. And that can cause not as good quality sleep, because now you're actually asking your brain to work at night as well. So just be aware of that. But I think that the bottom line is, yes, you relax about the problem, which gives you and your brain a wider set of potential solutions. And often in the morning, that's what happens, is we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could do that. Because you're not stressing about it at night. You're allowing the range of solutions to present themselves.
Love it. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And yeah, just to, again, guys, if you are interested and you want to be part of this group that Beatrix and I are in, and Nash and Jimmy and Kate are in, then head to the link in the show notes and join the Make It Happen community. Beatrix, you've been a fantastic guest. I've asked you so many questions. I think I've asked you more questions than I've ever asked a podcast guest in a 30-minute stint. There's loads of little nuggets of wisdom that I want to absorb from you. But if people have been listening to this and again, do you know what? Beatrix is talking so much sense, but I want to go the next level deeper than this. You've written a book.
Yes. The book is now 6 years old, and it introduces the ideas. So it's a good start, but it's a short intro. I think one of the other things I would suggest is link up with me, come along to my website, because over the last 6 years, lots of different things have grown within my work. And I think, the resources are there on my website. I think, as you do as well, you learn new things, you share new things. You're always learning, just like, I'm always learning about sleep. Some of the things that I might have said 6 years ago, I'm like, oh, I expanded on that actually. So I think the best way, yes, go ahead, read. It's a very good intro. It's a very basic, good intro. And then the rest is the website. It's got a lot more resources.
So again, I'll put the link to the website in the show notes so people can head to that. And the book's called The Sleep Deep Method.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if people want to get on Amazon and want to grab that or get it directly from your website, wherever they can get access to that. So are there any key, again, I've asked you a lot and you've shared so much, but are there any what you would regard as typical tips, the ones that come up most often with your clients that we've not touched on? I mean, I've tried to cover as many bases as possible here, but is there anything we've not mentioned that would be useful for people right now, just as a final sort of parting message?
I think I've seen lots of different versions of the same problem. So I'm just going to close up with this one. And if you're interested in the science of sleep, go read about it. There's plenty of great books. But sleeping well is not rocket science. It's a set of skills, which I call sleep skills, that you can develop so that you can guarantee great quality sleep for life. And that's the message that I want to leave you with, all the listeners, because it's not just about the science, it's the practicalities of how you can actually make that happen.
Lovely. Well, Beatrix, thank you so much for your time. Again, for anybody that's listening to this, head to the show notes, find Beatrix, connect with her on social media, go to the website, use the online resources. As she's just mentioned, it's a skill, it can be developed, and you too can have a fantastic quality night's sleep. So Beatrix, thanks again. I'm sure we can get you involved again at some point. I'm sure this episode is going to kick up lots of questions from people in the community. So thank you again for your time. Thank you to everybody that's been listening. And until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.